Hey there guys, if you couldn't tell from the video thumbnail, I have a new diagnosis to talk about. For those of you who don't know, my wife Allison was diagnosed with autism and ADHD. It was an incredibly long, frustrating process for her to go through and to get like a later in life diagnosis of ADHD and autism. And me and her are going to talk about that more on the Neuro Blend podcast that we have. And I'm really excited to get more into her story and what it was like to go through all that at 30 years old. But while we were doing that, I had to do an assessment for her, because I'm her spouse and I live with her every day on different ADHD symptoms. And while we were doing it, I started recognizing that I had a lot of the symptoms as well. And I know people say that all the time. They're like, oh, I have all these symptoms. And so I was like, I'm not going to jump to any conclusions. I don't want to assume that I have it. I understand the importance of self-diagnosing if you're unable to get in to see a psychiatrist or you're unable to afford to get a diagnosis. I completely understand. That is 100% valid. I do, however, have those resources. I have a psychiatrist, I have a psychologist, I have the money to go and do the testing. So I figured since I was identifying some of these symptoms, I would go do that. And it turns out I have ADHD. People who know me, are surprised that I'm just now getting this diagnosis, but I wanted to walk you guys through what this process was like, why I started to question and think that I might have it, how I got to a point of stability in my schizophrenia diagnosis that I could even pursue an ADHD diagnosis, and also some of the studies I found about dual diagnosis with schizophrenia and ADHD. So let's go ahead and get started. So, according to the National Institute of Health, ADHD is a common condition and likely a common comorbidity with schizophrenia. The reason this all came about was because of my wife's diagnosis, but also I actually was supposed to be tested for ADHD as a child. My brother and I were both set to be tested for ADHD, and I, at the time, was very anti-medication, very anti-mental health diagnosis. And the reason for that is, for those of you who don't know or don't remember, I have a mother diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder. And she got this diagnosis when I was young. So I saw a lot of the stigma that surrounds mental health and taking medication. And it was very concerning to me because I was too afraid to admit that I was having certain symptoms that I found concerning because I didn't want the diagnosis. I was afraid of a diagnosis and having to be on medication. No one wants to be the kid or young adult on a bunch of medication. And my mom, because of her schizoaffective disorder, her depression, and she has actual physical health issues as well, she was on roughly 8 to 10 meds a day. I was so terrified of that when we were supposed to go get tested for ADHD, I backed out. I decided not to do it. And my mom has always been someone who really supported my decisions, even as a young child. Because even as a young child, I had to become an adult very quickly. My mom was a single parent who was going through a psychotic break, and so I had to take care of her, take care of my younger siblings. Because I had to grow up very quickly, my mom always respected my decisions. So I didn't end up getting tested for ADHD, but my brother did. And my brother got diagnosed and he got on medication, and I really didn't think about it again until much later in life, because when I went off to college I had so much trouble focusing on what I was doing, especially in classes, and I started to think that maybe I should go get tested for it. But before that could happen, I had my psychotic break. As a lot of you know who followed me for quite a while, my first year of college is when I started having my schizophrenia symptoms. And I've been dealing with those symptoms for the last almost 10 years now. It wasn't until I got stable with my schizophrenia medication that I was able to even start thinking about this again. And it's really interesting because the more stable I've gotten on my schizophrenia meds, the less I've had my symptoms, my hallucinations, my delusions, my paranoia, but the more I've started having the symptoms that are closely attributed to ADHD. I finally started asking my psychiatrist about this months ago, and we finally did some of the testing. So it turned out that I did have ADHD and I got an official diagnosis, but that leads to the next part, which is medication and treatment. This is probably going to be a little different for me than most adults with ADHD because antipsychotics and stimulants don't necessarily go together. It was really interesting talking to my psychiatrist, and I think this is going to be different for me than most people. What I'm really looking at right now is trying to find out what will work and then how I can start using the knowledge that I have this diagnosis to find ways to function better throughout the day and have some different coping mechanisms. And so I'm really grateful to be at a point where I can even start looking into this. I think it's really important to acknowledge also that I understand how lucky I am to have the resources and ability to be able to pursue this diagnosis and look into this and to be able to even get medication if that's something that works for me. I also have so many questions, right? Because I've been told that schizophrenia is an overabundance of dopamine in the brain, but I've also heard that ADHD is not enough dopamine in the brain. So it's interesting to think that I could have both. It might be because I'm more stable with my schizophrenia symptoms now. So if that's true about the levels of dopamine, my antipsychotic medication might be helping me reach my normal levels of dopamine, which I think would allow me to see these symptoms again. But I plan on doing a lot more research now about ADHD and schizophrenia and ADHD by itself. I also want to let you guys know that I probably won't be making much content about this diagnosis. I have some content creators that I really like that I would highly recommend if you're looking into ADHD content. The first one would be Connor. If you've seen ADHD content, you've probably already seen Connor.
Hey, your teachers emailed us. They said that you're not doing your homework. What have you been doing?
But yeah, my brain wanted to learn how to draw instead.
Holy shit, I didn't know you could draw. When'd you learn how to do that?
Like 2 weeks ago after the whole customizing shoes phase.
When'd you start doing
I
that?
think it was like a month ago after the Rubik's Cube phase.
Wow. Anything else? What else you been doing up here?
Well, I just hit 3 million followers on TikTok.
How did you learn all of these things?
I don't know, I just follow the dopamine.
He does an amazing job at showing what ADHD really looks like, and he's a big reason why I started to question whether or not I might have ADHD. So I highly recommend Connor. The second one is Cody Lukens. And no, I'm not just picking him because both of our names are Cody with a K. He also has really informative content. He did a video about a day in the life of an ADHD content creator that I found super interesting. So
I haven't done anything today because I've just been waiting for this appointment. Of course, now that it's time to go, I'm not ready. Okay.
Am I ever gonna hang up that piece of artwork on the floor? I mean, maybe next weekend.
That is
I should eat those vegetables I bought before they go bad again.
Why did I walk in here? I'll remember in a minute. Oh, shoot.
Did Einstein
When
cut
was the
his
last
own
time I
hair?
actually closed the rings in my Apple Watch? Is this an
Oh,
hour towards my stand goal?
Great.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I'm
did
definitely
forget to
gonna
drink my
play
tea
some
though.
Do I still have
There's
that big
another
box
tea
of
bag
goldfish in
down
my
the
closet?
drain.
I need to remember to do my
Okay.
stretches for physical therapy
wallet,
later.
right.
Who am I kidding? No one does those. I got that book
Wallet,
several weeks ago and I haven't even
keys,
opened
those
it
are
yet.
also
That's
important.
embarrassing.
Not forgetting anything else.
You forgot a smile, is what someone would say if they saw my RBF in public.
Let's see.
Brief moment of
Need
clarity.
anything
Oh,
else?
never mind.
Jacket. It's convenient. I left it right here. Wow.
And then third is Dr. Cojo. I highly recommend Dr. Cojo, not just for ADHD content, but if you're interested at all in mental health, addiction, or neurodiversity content. He is an amazing content creator with some really good resources. I'm not saying I won't ever make content or talk about my ADHD, but there are so many creators doing that who I think know the diagnosis much better and are able to articulate it really well. And so I would recommend checking out those creators. I am going to continue doing content about living my daily life with schizophrenia, as I think that's a bigger part of what I struggle with. It's also something that I'm more knowledgeable on, being that I am someone living with schizophrenia, and I was at one point a caregiver for someone with schizoaffective disorder. So I think my advocacy is going to be better used in this space. However, I'm more than happy to answer any questions, and I'm going to do a follow-up video in quite a while. We're probably going to wait until I find either treatment or medication or something that works well for me, and I'll give you guys an update. But I just wanted to let you know that this is, a new part of what I'm dealing with, and it's going to be relevant to some of the future updates I give. So if you guys have any questions or comments, leave them down below. Also, tag your guys' favorite ADHD content creators. I only listed 3, but I know there is so many more than that. I wanted to thank you guys so much for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next week.